If your football team had one option in their playbook, the results probably wouldn't be great. The same could be said for your investments. SIBO index options like SPX and XSP can help expand your investing strategies with cash settlement and potential tax advantages. If you're ready for a more dynamic game plan, head to betterwithoptions.com. SIBO, life is better with options. Your investments could be too. There are risks associated with SIBO company products. Review the disclosures and disclaimers at SIBO.com/US_disclaimers.
Don't miss out on the final football game of the season with Prize Picks. Join now because Prize Picks are giving away a free pick for the big game where 1 yard equals 1 win. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks app and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's time to remember this crap about the Dolphins with Mike Donahue. Mike, how are you?
Good, Andy. Thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Any time I get a chance to talk about the long, historic rivalry, the Bears and the Dolphins, in the one game anybody ever remembers that they played against each other.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So now that before we get started, I thought we'd kill 40 minutes with just some regular banter.
As we do.
So, the Pointless Exercise newsletter is on Substack because I wanted to be on the same writing staff with like Matt Iglesias and I don't know. I think Megan McCain probably has. I don't know who has a Substack. Anyway, they were so with the demise of Twitter and 3,700 Twitter employees are getting fired tomorrow.
That's a lot.
It's half their workforce. And apparently the way they're going to do it, Elon is just the best. If you get an email to your Twitter email address tomorrow morning, you still have a job. If you get an email to your personal email account, it is your separation agreement.
How does HR get away with not sending a separation agreement to your company email domain?
I don't think Elon does things the right way ever.
I'm starting to think that he doesn't quite understand the nuances of.
But we've been those of us who have Substack newsletters, like me and Kelly Breyer over there at tsa.substack.com and other guys.
The second arrangement, folks. Our friend Katie.
We've been getting lots of emails from Substack about a new feature that is on if you have the app, if you have the iPhone app, and soon if you have the Android app. And actually, the app for Substack is pretty good.
I did not know.
Yeah. There's a chat feature that they have enabled starting today. They're basically positioning it as a replacement for Twitter. So how it would work is I, as your newsletter author, would throw out like a topic. And then you guys could just hop on and start chatting away about it. So
sounds very 2006.
It sounds very much like it's a shout box, basically.
Sounds like the Discipio message board.
And I will admit that is what made me think of a tweet that I sent today. I tweeted at our friend Mike Brott and at his former girlfriend Carrie Muscat. The two of them in the same tweet.
Right.
And I asked them if they were going to sue if Elon rebrands Twitter as the Musk box. Because he could.
Nicely done.
I haven't heard back from either one of them yet.
I've got Mike's number. I should maybe make sure he's got these.
Well, I've got Mike's number.
Email. Well, don't want to pester him.
So anyway, who knows? You may get to start chatting on pointless exercise. It'll just become the new Twitter. It'll be great.
Could be. Right.
It could be something. All right, so the Bears are playing the Miami Dolphins on Sunday. And it is a rivalry that goes back all the way to 1971. So the rivalry is your age.
How about that? Happy half a century Bears-Dolphins rivalry.
People remember, I think, because it gets shoved in our face every year. When the Eagles finally lose this year, are there any 72 Dolphins still alive? Are they?
I think
is Larry Zonka still around?
To the shock of probably any working actuary, Mercury Morris is still amongst the living.
Yeah,
I believe. No, a lot of people
would. Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Cocaine, incarceration, just.
So people remember they had a perfect season in 72. They won the Super Bowl again in 73. They were only founded in 1966.
Correct. They were not an AFL charter franchise.
They were an AFL expansion team.
Yep.
They are the. How about this for a factoid that I learned just looking on Wikipedia a few minutes ago? They are the only team in the AFC North that is not a charter member of the AFL.
AFC East.
AFC.
Wait.
They're in the East. Whatever they're at. God damn it. Yeah, it wouldn't be the North. That would be tough geographic. AFC East. They're the only ones. So that's who.
The only ones that's the Jets.
That's the Bills, Jets, and Patriots.
Those are all charter AFL franchises, right? The Patriots are. The Jets were the New York Titans originally. They had leather helmets, and Buffalo, I think, was one of the early competitors. All right, so I wonder how many. I'm just wondering how many. It's fascinating that the AFL was allowed to get such a toehold for so long after years. We talked about how the NFL would quickly squash like the All-American Football Conference and acquire the Browns and Colts and Niners, that they didn't squash the AFL, and in fact the AFL was allowed to expand. And I think what you're saying is that the Dolphins' first year was 66. By the time they expanded, the NFL had realized, oh shit, we got, the NFL then I think expanded around the same time with the Falcons and the Saints, and then realized we have to just, there's more. They weren't actually being, forced against their will. There was great, wonderful, profitability and merging with them, but it took them a long.
Well, and it took the NFL a very long time to learn of the wonders of expansion fees. And once the owners got a taste of that, they'd expand every year if they could. They don't.
Right. The precursor to PSLs, right?
So yeah, the Dolphins were only in the AFL for 4 years.
Until they merged in the beginning of 1970. Right. Okay.
Do you know who there were there were co-owners when they were founded? One of them they named the stadium after for a while.
Joe Robbie.
The other one he's dead. Was a celebrity.
I would know him. We would know him. Some of our audience.
Oh yeah, you would know him. When I tell you who he is, you're gonna know who he is.
Is it Pat Boone?
No, I give you a couple of clues. There's a sex act named after him, which involves a woman. Which involves it doesn't have to be a woman and a man. It could be any two. It involves one person laying under a glass coffee table.
Oh, a Danny Thomas?
Yes.
Are you talking about the famous breakfast special, Eggs Danny Thomas style? Perchance, anyone that may have grown up with the Steve Dawes show might have kind of caught that reference.
Yeah. The other hit was going to be that his daughter married into your family.
Right, the Donahues, except Phil Donahue.
Right, he doesn't spell it.
Spells his name D-O-N-A. Right. Wow. Wait, is it? But that's not the Danny Thomas. That was the original original.
Yeah, actor was Danny Thomas. We had a bunch of money. I mean, he certainly had AFL expansion team money. And think about how much money that turned into when they became all of a sudden became an NFL team.
it probably helped fund his the children's hospital or the St. Jude's, I think, wasn't it?
Think about all the glass coffee tables.
He loved his glass coffee tables, but he also helped the children. He did. St. Jude's. Oh boy. I hope we've left enough clues in case anyone's curious and they're not finding the results at their local library. But so wow, okay. So I'm just kind of curious. The Dolphins could not have been the only expansion team. There must have been two post original AFL teams. But regardless, that would explain why the fact the Bears never really, they don't go back. Of course, they would not have been playing AFL teams back then anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. But were they the first football team in Florida? They must have been, right?
Yes, they're the oldest continuously operating professional sports franchise in Florida.
Okay. So pretty early on, just like a lot of other expansion teams when you think about it, like the NFL's Dallas Cowboys, the NFL's Minnesota Vikings, that within 5 years of their expansion, they were an elite team.
Yeah, they were
because they played in Super Bowl IV against Tom Landry and Mike Ditka. That was one of the two Super Bowls that Roger Staubach won. They got skunked in that Super Bowl in January of 1972, right around the time that a young Mike Donahue would have been born. And then, as you already referenced, would follow that up with a very fluky undefeated season and kind of an additionally fluky playoff run. They were not that good, but whatever. Like the 85 Bears were awesome.
I think the great Bob Griese. I think Griese was hurt from a lot of the undefeated season, right? Earl Morrill played quarterback for them.
Is that right?
Yeah. Donnie brought him with. Do you know who the first coach in Miami Dolphins history was?
Well, it wasn't Shula because he was still he was not quite.
Shula wasn't dicking around with that AFL shit. He waited
right.
Until he joined the NFL.
He was an NFL guy that sort of brought shame to the NFL by sort of feeding into the Joe Namath myth and blowing Super Bowl III. But yeah, he was a longtime Weeb Eubank disciple. I think for you and I growing up, it always kind of felt like Don Shula and Tom Landry were like the two giants. They're in each conference. And it felt like they'd been there forever, and they kind of were. But Shula, like as you point out, was not the original coach of the Dolphins like Landry was for the Cowboys, because he was a head coach of already an elite NFL team. So no, would I know? Would any of our listeners, audience, know who the
Dolphins' first coach is? Went to Northwestern. He played his entire NFL career for the Bears. He won 4 NFL championships with the Bears, 40, 41, 43, 46. He was first team All-Pro in 1942, second team All-Pro in 1943. He was...
George.
Who did he coach before?
Not George Connor. Wow. What was he? Just a legendary Hallis disciple that was in the behind the scenes that we don't even know? I'm looking it up now because I'm not going to wait.
He coached the Detroit Lions to an NFL championship
with Bobby Lane in 57. So the last. So
I don't know who this guy. I never heard of this guy.
He played for George Hallis. Went to high school. I'm looking at George Wilson.
George Wilson. The first coach of the Dolphins.
First coach of the Dolphins, high school. He's a Chicago kid, went to Austin High School. So George Hallis was probably scouting his ass. He was born in 1914, so that tracks because yeah, it tracks.
He went to homecoming one year with Virginia.
Right, he did. He asked her out and was turned down because Bronco Nagurski was making some moves apparently. But yeah, if he was born in 1914, basically when he's in high school, 1926, 27, George Hallis is building his empire, and George Hallis is probably aware of him if he's the kind of stud that would eventually become the first ever coach of the Dolphins. And what a hell of a long – so he was the coach of the Lions. The Lions, all right, as we've said, the Lions have won one playoff game since 1957. So today I learned that their coach in that 57 game was George Wilson, who played for the Bears in 4 championships and was the Dolphins' first coach. Just want to make sure I got that right.
Quite an athlete. He also played a season of professional basketball for the Chicago Bruins. Whatever that is.
Is that pre-NBA? Poor George Wilson died in 1978. We were just kids. He only lived to be 64. Not a Hall of Famer, but he played on 4 NFL championships, you're saying? And he coached an NFL champion? Seems like an underrated guy.
In 1960, he had to hire a new defensive coordinator for the Lions, and he hired Don Shula.
What?
Yeah. Look at that.
I love that we do these, remember this crap, all this crazy shit we remember from the 80s and 90s, and then I end up educating the hell out of myself. So there's an absolute sort of a tree going on there that Shula himself seemed like an antecedent, and yet he's branching off of this George Wilson. So what, Wilson just, I don't know how he lost his job. Did Shula stab him in the back and get or just, so they go back? Yeah, wow. That's incredible. I'm a bit verklempt to learn about this fellow George Wilson. Almost wondering, why is he not in the NFL? He played on 4 NFL championship teams. For Christ's sake, he coached the goddamn Detroit Lions to an NFL championship. You know how hard that is? And he kind of
right.
Well, unless he was, they won championships in 52 and 53 too. Oh. So no, he may have been a bit of a glory boy that came in, but he won it without Bobby Lane, because Bobby Lane got hurt in that 3rd championship. The Lions have won 4 NFL titles in their lifetime. The first is in 1935, and then they won 3 in the 50s in the Bobby Lane era. But Bobby Lane, I believe, was injured for the 57 championship game when they beat the Browns. So
who played that one? Greg Landry?
He was Greg Landry.
Like when he had brown hair?
A young Greg Landry.
There was never a young Greg Landry.
And maybe George Blanda was on the other sideline. But anyway, George Wilson, a heretofore underrated NFL figure, led the Lions to their last NFL championship without the services of Hall of Famer and former George Halas cast-off.
Well, and he set the table
for the Dolphins.
His Dolphins were 3-11, 4-10, 5-8, 3-10-1. And then Shula took over in 70, and they went 10-4, 10-3-1, 14-1, 12-2, 11-3, blah blah blah.
They're a meat tenderizer.
Let's see. Let's look at George Wilson's last season. Who did he have here?
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear.
He had Bob Griese. Bob went 2-6-1. He had Jim Kick and Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris.
Nick Bonicatti.
He had Dick Anderson.
Wow.
Bill Stanfill, former Bear coach, right? No,
that's Dick Stanfill.
Bill's brother.
Tom Thayer does a great.
Nick Bonicatti, good old number 85. Manny Fernandez.
Wow, holy shit! You're right. The pieces were in place,
and they would be again. They would be again later for Wani in Miami.
Right.
The places were in pieces.
Right. Or Steve Rosenbloom once said, the pieces are in pieces.
So much like our crap last week, where our Tom Landry coached forever, and then the Cowboys kept changing coaches except for what's his name, the ginger dumbass,
Garrett.
Yeah,
right.
Garrett.
They've had the Cowboys have had 2 coaches only that have coached at least 9 seasons.
Dolphins had 2 coaches in their first 30 years.
Including George Wilson, which is kind of you to include him because he was only there for like 5.
He's there for 4. Shula was there for 26. In the 26 years since, they've had 11 coaches.
Wow.
A couple of interims.
Ooh, interim coaches.
Interim coaches.
Even the Dolphins have had interim coaches.
Interim coaches were...
let's see here. Any former Bears? Was Keith Armstrong a Dolphin coach? Why did his?
No, Adam Gase was though.
Oh, that's right.
He took him to playoffs. Interim
Is that right?
Interim coaches were Jim Bates, former I don't know,
Cowboy.
Well, I was thinking of
right.
It was Bill Bates, right?
That's Bill Bates.
But he probably was because he took over for Wani. Wani got sent home a little early.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that Wani was
10
a Dolphins coach.
No, it was 7 games left in the 04 season. Wani
made it that long. Wow, he stretched an NFL coaching career that almost touched a whole decade.
Todd Bowles was an interim coach for 3 games when Tony Sperano, not Tony Soprano, Tony Sperano got whacked.
Right.
The great Dan Campbell was an interim coach when Joe Philbin got fired. He coached the Dolphins for 12 games. He won. He was 5-7. I don't think he's won 5 games for the Lions in 3 years. Yeah, what a fun bunch.
That's a lot of interim coaches.
It is. Still hoping the Bears get one someday. Not soon.
So Joe, what's
not soon? But
no,
someday.
I do too. We've talked about it. That's why it's kind of a little bit of a white whale for us. The Bears have never had an interim coach. Joe Robbie and
Danny Thomas.
Right, Danny Thomas. So Joe Robbie Stadium, just a random memory, it opened in 1988. That's where the 1997 World Series ended, right, when the Indians lost, not against the Cubs. But
Aramis Ramirez had a grand slam in that stadium.
Fucking A, that's right, he did. And
in a playoff.
Right. Yeah. And that's also Ramirez bobbled that ball, and after Rumlinger was pitching, they got
Luis Castillo ran right into him.
But the first Sunday night football game, I want to say, in 1987 in ESPN.
Oh, is that Bears Dolphins?
Bears Dolphins, and
I remember the reason I remember that game is we had our satellite dish by then
out in the country,
but there was thunderstorms, and
because it was August,
and we could not, like, the game kept coming in and out depending on the atmosphere. I remember that. That was on TNT, right?
I thought it was ESPN. I'm pretty sure it was ESPN. It was the debut of Joe Robbie Stadium, and it was the first ever Sunday night football game. And I look it up because I want to know, because I want to tell you, I know who at least one of the announcers was, and it was not a guy you would think of. And it might have been, it's a guy you may have totally forgotten about unless I've just clued you in with that. I can't even remember who the play-by-play or all I remember is that Roy Firestone was part of a 3-man booth.
Oh, God.
Remember Roy Firestone? He was considered the best interviewer in the business.
He's a whole subplot in Jerry Maguire. Remember, because everybody would cry when they went on the show, and Rod Tidwell, you're not going to make me cry, Roy.
It was, yeah. If it was the digital era, it'd be a meme. That's Roy Firestone, making people cry. But he was the third guy in the booth. Couldn't even tell you. So I'm pretty sure it was ESPN.
It could be.
TNT did not exist in 1987. Or it was TBS did.
Well, okay, it was TBS. They split. I know when Sunday Night first started, some Turner entity and ESPN split the schedule.
Okay. I don't think that was in the beginning, because in the beginning, that's a long time ago, 1987. Fucking Ronald Reagan was president. TNT did not exist.
TV has no hidden fees.
TBS was still showing TV programs 5 minutes after the hour.
Well, I found the highlights from the 1987 game. Let's see if I can figure out where.
It is preseason, right? There are actual highlights. Some hilarious guy in 1987 and actually broke out his
preseason game.
VHS recorded a preseason. Well, because it was historic. It was the christening of Joe Robbie Stadium.
Well, I got the local feed here. Oh, there he is. It's theirs. Yeah, you're right. There's Roy Firestone.
Who are the other guys?
Let's see. Mike Patrick.
I was going to say Mike.
It's going to be Mike Patrick, Paul McGuire, and Roy Firestone. Let's see. Here's Roy.
Okay.
I see Roy. Who's sitting next to him? Come on. Oh, and they're showing highlights from the loss in '85.
Right. They could have been showing. They could have been showing like Andre.
Actually, I think it's just the two. I think it's just Mike Patrick and Roy Firestone.
Wow. Okay.
Well, maybe not. There's somebody next to him, but they're going to cut away here. Oh shit.
But Joe Robbie Stadium is where the first ever official Sunday night football game took place.
Roy Firestone. Who thought that was a good idea?
That's what I'm saying. In retrospect, it even seems more absurd.
It was 89 degrees. Is that Fuad Reves kicking off?
Fuad Reves. So the Bears would actually play them later, but maybe we should go back and see. Well,
I'm going to listen to it a little bit, see if we can hear
now his first
turn it up.
A linebacker on an obvious passing.
Could be
it's they put the Dolphins radio call over it, so it's not going to solve my.
Oh, probably one of those assholes from the '72 team that show up in people's strangers' driveways and pop champagne when. That is a good question, though. How many guys in the
I found it.
Dolphins are alive?
So you're right. ESPN had the first 3 years of Sunday Night Football.
87, 88, 89.
In 1990, the NFL split its Sunday night package between TBS and ESPN for a reported $900 million for 4 years.
It's a lot of money back then.
See, TBS will get 3 exhibition games each year, plus regular season games in the first 9 weeks of 90, 92, and 93, and the first 8 weeks of the 1991 season. So I remember that. I said the years wrong. Because that was that was Mark May, and he had just retired, I think.
From the Redskins.
Yeah. I don't remember who the play-by-play guy was.
So I'm slowly going through the 72 Dolphins while we work through that. So far, Earl Morrow died in 2014, so he's dead. Bob Griese, father of former Bear Brian Griese, whom we talked about recently, still alive.
Okay, well, somebody there.
Champagne. I'm keeping tabs. Jim Delgado is the other third stringer, still alive, kicking it. At the age of 78. Larry Zonka's probably still alive.
I think he is.
Yeah. Hey, born on Christmas, 1946.
Just like
Jesus.
Syracuse.
Right.
Even though we all know Jesus was born in April.
Right. And Mercury Morris is, in fact,
Larry's
still alive. Yeah, his birthday's 4 days before mine, January 5th, 47.
So there's still a few of those annoying.
Yeah, whatever.
Hey, we went undefeated. Oh, did
hopefully they break their hip when the Eagles lose to the Bears when I'm in attendance on December 18th this year. When the 3-11 Bears upset the 13-0. Do I have the math right? 3-10 Bears upset the 13-0 Eagles in week. Pretty sure it's 15. That's our annual Bears game. So. Don't expect me to come back with a faithful reporting. You know my other Bears game this year, Andy? This Sunday against the Dolphins. I've never seen the Dolphins.
Oh, well.
I'm a privileged kid that has been able to see the Bears play almost everybody in Soldier Field. I've never seen the Dolphins.
They have a fun offense.
Not even in preseason. They do. Should I take the over while I'm out since I'm going out there?
They might get the over all by themselves.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Now, the Bears are loaded up with offensive talent. It's going to be a shootout.
Receiver. I'm down.
It was a shootout last week. 49-29.
Yeah. It wasn't too dispiriting, but...
So the Dolphins have been around since... let's see. They've been in the NFL since 70. So this is the 52nd year.
Yep.
The Bears and the Dolphins have played 13 times.
Yep. So I'm going to just throw out one because there aren't that many. We can get into some that you'll totally remember. But last week we talked about the Cowboys, and I talked about how in 1979 I found myself finally consciously thrust into caring about the Bears after sort of them being in the background, but knowing who teams like the Cowboys were and maybe the Raiders and shit like that. The Bears get off to a 2-0 start in 79, and I'm really getting into it. They face those evil damn Cowboys, and they play them tough, and they lose the end. And I was so angry as a 7-year-old kid. And then the next week they played the Dolphins, and it was like another dose of it because you kind of knew the Dolphins too. We already said like how Shula and Landry were both sort of iconic. The Dolphins themselves at that point, they'd been in 3 Super Bowls in the 70s. The AFC was 3 teams in the 70s. It was the Dolphins, it was the Raiders, it was the Steelers. And so even though I'm new to football, I'm recognizing that I'm seeing this team that I've just been born into challenging these like universal transcendent brands. The Cowboys first, frustrating loss, and then the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, unlike the Cowboys game the week before, pretty much just kicked the shit out of the Bears in week 4.
Who was playing quarterback for the Dolphins back then?
Well, it was still Griese, I'm pretty sure. I remember that fucking Coke bottle wearing glass motherfucker
throwing the ball 8
Yeah.
yards in the air.
He's a Hall of Famer,
Yeah,
right?
and it's ridiculous.
He rode the coattails
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
that.
He's the
ridiculous.
Harold Baines of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
They won it on defense, and
And he had
somehow
that-
they made stars out of their offense. Not
For
to
so
rip on
many years,
Saka either.
he had the weirdest face mask too. It wasn't a single bar. It was a double, but it was like way too low, and the bars were too close together. And I think it was so it didn't fog. As he needed some wind to keep his glass from fogging up.
Because he had regular Coke bottle glasses. But you're right. You describe it perfectly. His face mask always looked almost like a place kicker's face mask.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was super easy to just punch him right through it. It's like why do you have it on?
Son of a bitch.
Who was the punter? Was it
Well, we'll get into
punter
Reggie
for the Cardinals
Roby.
for a long time? Somebody Player. Remember the punter's last name was Player? And he
yes.
didn't even he still had the single bar, and he could move it. Like he didn't even tighten it. He could like move it up and down. Like he'd be lined up for a punt, and he'd like move it so that it hey, you don't want the single bar blocking the ball. You're not going to catch it.
Nice.
It's like
nice.
I don't think that's all that safe.
Yeah, our friend Mike Pusateri probably would not appreciate us taking a big giant shit on Purdue alum Bob Griese, but
No, Bob Griese sucked.
He's a Hall of Famer, and I don't know how to measure it here. 25,000 yards, so he's barely
better than
above
Mike Phipps?
He's barely right. He was.
Are they both in the Ring of Honor?
25,000 yards would barely. He'd still be the Bears' all-time leading passer, but barely. All right, and he's far from, of course, being the Dolphins for obvious reasons.
Yeah, the Dolphins' all-time leading passer is Chad Pennington, right?
Yeah, correct. Yes. I think it's. I can't think.
Did Dan Marino throw for more yards in 1983 than any Bear has ever thrown for in their career?
No, 84 is a season.
Or 84. That was he threw for like 58.
That was the 40. That was the 48
ridiculous.
touchdown season when that was unheard of. Yeah, they had that, but Griese totally rode the coattails. I think it's fair to say to 2 Super Bowl championships, and then in '79 he's still there. Zonka was not necessarily still there when they played the Bears. He was back. He had left the Dolphins, and then he came back. But like I said, the Dolphins were pretty much an elite brand, which I think probably is not something we don't we want to just ignore or not make too fine a point of, because if you are a bit younger, that sounds as ridiculous as hearing that the Bears may have once been a premier brand, because the Dolphins, another team, right, in the last 30 years that somehow are more laughable than the Bears.
Yeah,
because the Bears have been to 2 Super Bowls since the last Dolphins Super Bowl,
and one of them right in their own stadium.
Yeah, and Prince was there. They'd
have wanted it in
rain. And it rained. My brother was there, and it was the only one that rained.
All right, so I should have this committed to memory. How many yards? Johnny Morris, 5,500, right? That's the all-time.
It's between 5,000 and 6,000, so you're close enough. I'll look it up, but yes.
So in 1984, Dan Marino almost threw for as many yards as Johnny Morris caught in 10 years as a Bear. Dan Marino threw for 5,084 yards.
Johnny Morris in 121 career games, all with the Chicago Bears, 5,059 yards. Just barely over
5,059. 5059?
Yep.
Marino threw for more. 5,084. Jesus Christ. It's like the Bears playing the same
25
sport as everybody else.
A quarter of a football field more than a man's career that is amazingly still alive at the age of
if Johnny Morris had played on the 84 Dolphins and caught every pass that Dan Marino completed that year, he would have had more yards in that season than he got in his entire career with the Bears. And he's the greatest. He's the most productive Bear receiver of all time.
Well, right. He is the all-time Bears leading receiver by yardage.
How about this? When the Bears, I'm just obsessed with this, with the 5,000 yards being the Bears all-time receiver.
Me too. Barely 5,000 yards.
When the Bears traded for Chase Claypool, I immediately went and Googled, does he have more yards than Johnny Morris? No, he's got like 1,900 career yards.
Okay,
but
that's
2.5 seasons. That literally probably puts him like 20th in Bears history.
But we've talked about it.
He's never had a 1,000-yard season, and he'd be the greatest Bears wide receiver. He hasn't played a game yet. He's already the greatest wide receiver.
Correct. Alshon Jeffrey and even our guy Marshall, right? Brandon Marshall, who are teammates, so they're sharing receptions. Only because it was a rare glimpse in which the Bears really try to be in the 21st century on passing, did the bare minimum to basically threaten Johnny Morris, right? Because I'm pretty sure both of those guys are in the top 10.
Yeah, and neither one.
I think actually Jeffrey almost. If Jeffrey was able to stay one more season, he would be the Bear. I'm pretty sure. And by the way, Claypool, and you already look up Claypool because 2,000 yards receiving already. He's almost halfway to Johnny Morris.
He's 24
He might do it.
Old. Well, he's got to start over now, though.
Well, he's got to get the Bears yardage. Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Let's see. Brandon Marshall, 13th all time in Bears history.
How many
yards? 3 seasons for the Bears.
3 seasons.
3,524.
Wow. And he's the kind of guy that almost could have done that in one more season.
Alshon Jeffrey played 5 years for the Bears. He's their third all-time leading receiver. 4,549 yards.
One more season.
If he'd stayed one more year, he'd be the all-time leading receiver in Bear history.
Oh man! Meanwhile, the Dolphins. And so that he
is behind a Hall of Famer, though. Number 2 is Harlan Hill.
Oh, Harlan Hill is not a Hall of Famer. He's a Pro Bowler.
I thought he was. I thought he was a Hall of Famer.
As Mike Murphy would tell you, he was a Pro Bowler.
Oh, well then he's not behind Hall of Famer. There are so it's got to be Ditka, right? He'd be the Hall of Famer with the most. Well, no, it's Peyton.
Peyton, right? Because Peyton is still the all-time leader in number of receptions, though, right?
Alshon must have passed him in his last game as a Bear because he only has 11 more yards than Walter.
But Peyton is 4th in yardage. Wow. So it's funny. The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
A running back is 7th too on the list.
But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because in the early '80s, the Bears were plodding along. When we had a healthy McMahon, we had a good offense, but we were still plodding along. We had Peyton, but the Dolphins were like the absolute prestige brand on offense, right? They were with Marino, so it kind of extended the Shula legacy. Here's Shula. Don Shula becomes a legend during the 70s. He goes to 3 Super Bowls. He's constantly in contention. He's got all these Hall of Fame players, Zaka, Manny Fernandez, Bonacotti. And then he rolls into the 80s, goes to another Super Bowl against the Redskins after the 82 season with David Woodley and Don Straka is his quarterback. And then they end up selecting Marino as the 6th quarterback taken of 6 first-round quarterbacks that year. And then, of course, Marino takes him to the Super Bowl in his 2nd season. And that would be Shula's last Super Bowl. But at that point in time, and that was at a point which we've established, that the Ditka-era Bears, the one era that we, just joyously celebrate in our lifetime was becoming ascendant, was in that era where Don Shula was still an absolute fucking giant and he was taking teams in the Super Bowl. And that would have been in '84, still going. That would turn out to be it for him. He would coach for another decade, but At that point, he was already a legend. So when we were kids, Shula was, up there. It was Shula, Landry, Chuck Noll, Bud Grant.
I was just looking to see what the Dolphins were 9 and. Wait a minute, is this before the game or after the game?
And you jumping to 85?
Well, just for a second, but actually, before I get to that, I wanted to make fun of the Bears receivers one more time. This is how bad it is. Their top 2 receivers of all time are listed on Pro Football Reference as playing positions that don't exist anymore. Johnny
Flanker?
Morris, flanker. Harlan Hill, left end.
Oh my God!
And then you get down here to Jim Dooley. He's 15th. He's listed as RH.
Right halfback?
It's probably right halfback. Yeah. From the old T formation. You got a right half and a left half.
I love that Pro Football Reference will bother to track that down. And I don't love the fact that the Bears' 15th all-time leading receiver is listed under a position that hasn't existed since the Truman era. Yeah. It's the Truman administration.
I do think there's a lot of greats when you get into the 150s. Chris Gedney, 307 yards.
Who among us? Hey, we're going to do the Bills before Christmas Eve. Anyone out there recall the Chris Gedney one-handed catch against the Bills in 1994?
Was that the game where he ruptured his spleen and his career
Probably,
ended?
but it was worth it.
Red Grange, 158th in all-time Bears, 288 yards. Here are players with the Bears who had more yards receiving than Red Grange. They include Demir Bird last year, Dontrell Inman, Terry Obie. Let's see, Brandon Lloyd, former Illini star. Brandon
U of I,
Lloyd.
Yep.
Jeremy Langford, Curtis Enos,
former Spartan,
Devin Aromashadu, the Kaz, Golden Richards. Honestly, it's a star-studded list. Bob Parsons. Bob Parsons.
Former tight end punter.
Did he get more yards than Red? Fewer.
And Red Grange?
No, fewer. Red outdid him by about 50 yards. Bob Parsons played for the Bears for 19 years.
But he was a punter.
For 9 years. What's 19? For 11 years. 11 years.
Who the hell?
230.
I want to know who the hell was even throwing the ball to Red Grange.
Nobody. That's why he only had 288 yards. They hadn't invented the forward pass yet. And he had more yards. He had more yards receiving than Rashaan Salam. Sam Hurd. Here you go. Tell this. Sam, I think, listens to this podcast in the federal prison in Texas. Sam, you had less, former NIU star. You had less career receiving yards than Red Grange, 109.
And then Sam would say, I went to NIU. You need to say fewer yards.
Oh, here's your favorite player of all time, Pug Rentner.
Oh, sure.
Pug Rentner played for the Bears in 1937. He's listed as a B.
He sounds like an orphan that murdered He sounds like an orphan that murdered his parents that showed up on George Hallis's doorstep on Sheridan Road in 1939.
Who do you think of all the Bears who ever caught a pass? Who has the fewest yards in Bears history?
Jim Flanagan?
This is a border. No, but Flanagan. I saw
he's up there.
This guy had negative yards. Flanagan had positive yards. He is a Bear of recent vintage who is a borderline Hall of Famer.
Oh my God! I
would love to see the video of him catching a pass because he had to be lined up legally.
Oh, it's not a receiver.
He spent most of his time. He touched the ball on every offensive play, and on one play, he got to finish the play with the ball.
Now I'm lost.
Olin Kreutz.
Oh.
One catch for minus 8 yards.
Wow. A forward pass that he lost 8 yards on.
Yes. Other Bears with negative yardage totals for their career. Kyle Long caught one pass. It's got to be a deflection, right? Olin caught a deflected pass behind the line.
Right.
Rex Grossman, minus 4.
Yeah, caught it in his hands.
And Ed Brown, minus 6.
Okay, Ed Brown was also a quarterback, I believe.
Yes, he was.
That's usually getting bad in your hands. Remember that one time that
I'm going to close the all-time Bears receiving yards tab, or I will never talk about anything else. Okay.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to small business help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Well, I have to do a quick segue now that I'm reminded of great moments in fantasy football history for whomever had Brad Johnson in whatever year it was when he was still with the Vikings. I would say like 1999, where he threw a pass that got knocked into his arms and he ran around. He pulled a Chester Markle, second consecutive week they were making a Chester Markle reference. So there's no other way for a system to compute that other than a passing and a receiving touchdown.
Now, my favorite personal fantasy football moment of all time was a then Cowboy who would kick briefly for the Bears.
Chris Bonial?
Chris Bonial. I was going into.
Now, you told the story before.
Oh, yeah. Going into the final, the night, I'm down by 20 points, and the only guy I've got left, the only guy either one of us has playing is Chris Bonial, and he kicked 7 field goals, and I won by a point.
A much more positive memory than the time that I sat in old shithole Soldier Field in 1999 for a wild ass Jim Miller throws for 400 yards game against the Vikings, in which the Bears could not close it out because Bonial missed like a 38-yarder in overtime. So,
former Bear kicker Eddie Pinheiro had quite a week for the Panthers. The Falcons kicked a field goal to take a lead on them late. And
yeah, I saw that. Wait.
And then amazing pass.
Oh, is that Eddie Pinheiro?
Yes, amazing pass to DJ Moore. He catches it, takes his helmet off, gets a penalty. Eddie comes out, misses the extra point. They go to overtime. In overtime, Eddie has a kick to win the game, misses it. Falcons kick a field goal and win. That was our old buddy Eddie Pinheiro.
Is your personal contact still involved?
I don't know. I thought about it when I saw him because my a volleyball teammate at DePaul of my niece dated Eddie when he was a Bear.
All right, that's why I ask.
And I do not know if that's
okay. Just curious.
I can guess that it's no, but who knows? Kids, young kids in love,
right? So I referenced my 7-year-old ass watching in frustration the Bears get skunked in 79. I don't believe the Bears fucking Dolphins played again until 85 because the Bears were playing that 5th place schedule in 82, or I think the strike they may have been slated. No, the Bears were last place in 81. So again, the Dolphins were like a novelty, and then by 85, we don't care about the Dolphins
in
anymore.
79. Young Huey would have been. Rooting terrible again. The Dolphins quarterback had a nice tan. It was Don Strock. He was 12 of 17, 207 yards, and their kicker, was the great Uwe van Schamen.
Uwe van Schamen. He's been brought up before. I remember this crap.
We get to play a game of did Bob Thomas miss an extra point?
Oh, good point. He had to have.
He didn't
because he did.
He was perfect. Made his only extra point and made all 3 field goals.
Okay.
So
it wasn't Bob Thomas's fault.
Banner day for Bob.
Yeah. And we didn't happen to have a Vince Fipsolini, right? Not all 3 of those quarterbacks played in that game.
Nope, 2 did. Vince and Bob.
The 2. Okay, Vince and Bob. Mike Phipps was still recovering, trying not to show up his old college alumnus.
He'd probably stand on the other sidelines. They went to put him in, but he was over there looking for.
Pretty sure Mike Phipps came right after.
Hey guys, anybody seen Griese? He doesn't play for us anymore.
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
I'm just going to stay over here. All right, good.
Phipps was I think Phipps was the third pick in the draft, in the 69 draft, in which the Bears, because the Bears won their only game against the Steelers at Wrigley Field in 69, they did not, not that they would have taken Terry Bradshaw, but Mike Phipps was the third pick trade. So Mike Phipps must have come right after Bob Griese at Purdue. But yeah, so whereas in the third pick, right? The Bears traded theirs.
Yes, to Cleveland?
Yes.
I think we went through this list because that one pops out. So Terry Bradshaw, first overall. Mike McCoy of the Packers, defensive tackle.
Green Bay. That's what it was.
Number 2.
Packers.
Mike Phipps, number 3 to the Browns. Phil Olsen, defensive tackle to Boston. And number 5, the Buffalo Bills take L. Cowlings.
Right. Excellent driver.
You know this is. It's AC, damn it.
Right, much like Raymond Babbitt, an excellent driver, AC Collins.
So 31-16 that game in '79 down there in the
but the Bears recovered, would make the playoffs, and then get punched in the face, and then go back into the shitter. But then Jim Finks was still working and churning shit over, and then the Mike Ditka thing miraculously worked out, and then the next time they meet was a very iconic moment, and I don't think we needed to spend too much time on it.
The 12-0 Bears and the 8-4 Dolphins.
Yeah, 8-4. And the Dolphins, were the defending AFC champions. They, in fact, to this day, they were coming off what would still be their last Super Bowl appearance. They were the cream of the AFC. So, yeah, like I said earlier, too, Shula rode this team in the 70s. Great defense, had some stars on offense. And then lucks into Marino, and then rides it again, but only gets one Super Bowl out of it. But the Dolphins are a premier brand, and this whole bullshit about the 72 Dolphins is very much fervent.
Oh, and they were there.
And then, of course,
they were there standing on the sidelines.
Yeah. Think about it, kids. It's a very much made-for-media moment. It was exciting regardless of, how overblown it might have been or how frustrating it turned out to be.
Bears played without Jim McMahon, as they did occasionally.
Often.
And they were. There was a Nat Moore 33-yard touchdown pass from Dan Marino. Fuad Revez made the extra point. Then Steve Fuller
early on
run, so it tied it up at 7. Things are going fine. Then Fuad made a 47-yarder, 10-7.
Pretty long back then. Good for Fuad.
Then Ron Davenport had a 1-yard run. Fuad made the extra point. I'm just going to say Fuad because I like to. Kevin Butler made a field goal, 17-10. We're hanging in there.
It's close, right? But let's put it in context real quick because
then within 40 seconds, there was a Ron Davenport touchdown and a Nat Moore touchdown. It was 31-10 at halftime.
Was the Nat Moore touchdown off of Hampton? Was that the one off of Hampton's shoulder pad?
I know Nat caught a pass that bounced off Hampton. I guess it was a touchdown. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, he caught 2, I think, in the game.
Okay,
it wasn't the first one; it was the second one. Because I think it had to be because that was like oh fuck, now look at the stuff that's happening now.
Well, and here's the thing: we talked last week for listeners that are tuning in that might know this. Last week we talked about the Cowboys, and that was like the Bears had been reaching a fever pitch, and they went 10-0. The Cowboys was such a pronounced victory. And it had the sort of arbitrary 10th win of the season. The Bears are 10-0, and then they beat the Falcons the next week, 36-0. They're 11-0, and then they must have beaten somebody else, right? Because they come in. You said they came into this game 12-0. Okay, so they are they needed to probably lose. I hate to say it; it sounds convenient now, but they were due for a loss. They were flying pretty fucking close to the sun. It seems like in retrospect. But it was weird, though. Even though they got punched in the face early in the season, early in games against the Buccaneers and the Redskins and the Vikings, they got punched in the face against the glory boys of Dan Marino and Dolphins, and they couldn't quite recover. It felt like that was the feeling at the time. It was like they kind of got put on their heels, And it happened earlier in the season, but you didn't worry about it because nobody gives a fucking flying fuck about James Wilder and the Buccaneers and Tommy Kramer and the Vikings, and we're going to come back. But when Marino and the Dolphins did it and all those assholes standing on the sideline, you got to say there's probably a little bit of an effect there, and it got a little weird. It just felt weird as fans watching on Monday Night Football, which was still a relatively recent experience for us. And, it's just very, very uneasy night. It's probably the best way to put it.
A couple of famous things happened. McMahon came in late, I'm sure, to try to rally them, and really pissed Ditka off because he kept changing the plays to runs because he was trying to get Walter. It was that would end up being Walter's 8th consecutive 100-yard game.
34-year-old ass Walter Payton breaking new records.
So McMahon was pissed. He's basically in the huddle going, fuck it, we're not going to – he's acting like we're going to catch up.
They needed to lose. I hate to say it.
Change the runs. Yep. Walter would rush for 100 yards the next week against the Colts, and then his streak would end at 9. The Jets held him to 53 yards in a 19-6 Bears win
on a Saturday.
The Meadowlands.
On a Saturday, telling you.
It is, because 6 days after the Colts game.
Yeah.
The other famous thing that happened was they fly back to Chicago, and the next day they record the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yep.
So if you're thinking that the Bears players took this loss hard, not so much.
Right. That's true. The other
they weren't exactly reeling. They then sang about how it was inevitable they were going to win the Super Bowl and feed the needy.
Right. So all these motherfuckers all hungover, pissed off, coming off. Not all of them. Not all of them were in favor of it. Like, there's some guys that didn't like the look, but yeah, for the most part, they didn't give a fuck.
Well, and then Walter and McMahon didn't show up for the video, so that's why when you watch the video, they're very clearly digitally added to the video.
There was one more famous thing that happened in the Monday night game. That was one of William the Refrigerator Perry's first truly national commercial debut that night for McDonald's, and he sat in with Steve McMichael and Dan Hampton, and then lifted up the table. And my brother was quick to point out that in real life, Dan Hampton and Steve McMichael are not going to be that intimidated by the fridge. But it was marketing. But it debuted that night. Everything was reaching a fever pitch. The Bears needed to probably get held in check. It makes the narrative that much more authentic, I suppose, which might sound like a cop-out.
So, the whole idea was that the Dolphins had cracked the code on the 46 defense. Dan Marino had this huge game, and if they ever faced each other again, they would win it. But he was basically like, fuck that. What they did was they ran a bunch of quick passes to try to get the ball out before Dan could get murdered.
Right.
He was 14 of 27.
Yeah,
he got sacked 3 times. He over 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. But
that's interesting. It's funny because even by 85 standards, 14 of 27 is not awful. By today's standards, it is. By Dan Marino, 85
slightly
standards,
over
that is
50%.
not a good game.
No, it was not a good game for Marino.
But he got that. He got the deflection off of Hampton's shoulder pad, which kind of, that was like the ground ball going through Durham's legs. You just had to resign yourself to it, and realize, that let them have it. And then, of course, the Dolphins, they were elite, and they went to the conference title game, so everybody expected a rematch in the Super Bowl.
Which I think the Bears would have gladly.
I know it would have been. Honestly, even more so today than back then. I'm convinced it would have been something sweet if that happened. As sweet as the 46-10 against the. But that was the thing. It was like beating up on the Patriots back then. We made it very clear. We broke down the Patriots. If you know what we're talking about, go ahead and go back and listen a couple weeks. They were such a weird, nondescript fucking franchise. Nothing like the franchise today. When the Bears faced in the Super Bowl, they had no business being there. And the Bears humiliated them beyond what they even deserved. And it wasn't the Bears' fault that that the humiliation took place. They shouldn't have been there. They had no business upsetting, the Jets and then the Raiders and then the Dolphins. It should have been a low point in Boston history, and then it was quickly forgotten because Bill Belichick arrived. But that Super Bowl probably should have been the Bears and Dolphins. Would have been much more entertaining, and the Bears still would have kicked the shit out of them, right?
Yeah.
So,
it was a big game for Dolphins punt returner Tommy Vigorito.
See on The Sopranos?
One return for 4 yards, but I'm sure it was important. Whatever it was. Most important 4 yards of the game. Tommy Vigorito. So the next time the Bears and Dolphins would play, 1988.
Season opener. There was a brief period of time. Let me just say, between every season between 84 and 93, the Bears always opened the season at home. And then once the Ditka train got rolling, they always won at home. But for a while, they always opened at home against the AFC. So they won the Super Bowl, and then they opened up against the Browns in 86. And then, 87 was an exception because we broke that game down. But they opened up against the Dolphins in 88. They beat the Bengals in 89. But, 88 was the first game after which the McCaskey family decided to put real grass in Soldier Field. So, and it was also, as it turns out, the first game in which the Bears finally fucking beat the Dolphins. It did not happen until 1988. So,
and it was a resounding victory. The Bears won 34-7.
It felt good.
A couple of Neil Anderson touchdown runs, a couple of Jim McMahon touchdown runs, and Thomas Sanders capped off the scoring with a 20-yard touchdown run, and then Kevin Butler got his extra point blocked. Dan Marino in that game, 9 of 22 for 113 yards. And his backup came in to finish the game in the blowout. And it was...
Backup in 88?
Yes. A former Super Bowl quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Ron Jaworski?
Ron Jaworski. 1 for 3 for 15 yards.
Wow.
And Neil ran for 123 yards. Dennis McKinnon, 4 passes for 76 yards. He's still playing in 88.
McKinnon, I was amazed McKinnon was still playing in the Monday Night Lid Lifter in 87 against the Giants. He caught a touchdown, I believe. Or he did something else. He had a punt return for a touchdown. I can't believe McKinnon was still playing in 88. It just makes me love him more. Still, we can agree on this. Until further notice, still a elite Bears team by 88. Even though maybe there were holes, but Wilbur was gone, Peyton was gone, as you said. Anderson was a leading rusher. It felt good to beat the shit out of Dan Marino because he was a national hero. A few years removed from a Super Bowl appearance, villain in the 85 game. Future Hall of Famer, and you kind of expected that. The Bears always got off to good starts when the seasons began. So, but it was still gratifying. I didn't even realize that until recently. It was the first time ever that the Bears had beaten the Dolphins. So they've never beaten them.
They played again in '91 at Soldiers Field.
It's such a frustrating game. I remember this game,
and it was a clash of superstar quarterbacks, Dan Marino and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Bears had a 13-3 lead at the end of the third quarter.
I just remember them blowing this game somehow. I can't remember how. They had the game in their hand. Like a lot of games in the late Ditka era. They just couldn't fucking close the door.
Pete Stoyanovich kicked a 22-yard field goal with just seconds into the fourth quarter.
It was a really sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, with 1:51 left, Farrell Edmonds, the great Farrell Edmonds, got a 2-yard pass from Dan Marino to tie it and went to overtime. And in overtime, Pete Stoyanovich kicked a 27-yard field goal for the winner.
Well, I got to give Marino credit. He is a Pittsburgh kid. It was a cold fucking game. I remember this because Don Shula had like the big puffy back in it. So it was like late November. I want to say it was like Thanksgiving weekend. I'm looking at it now, November 24th. The conditions were not good, even by Chicago standards. It was colder than usual, even for November 24th. So it was like a shitty, like sleety, kind of cold, windy, and we're probably not going to get to the autopsy or the bottom of it. I just remember that the Bears had the game in hand. And I can just see from the line score they had a 13-3 lead. I think you already said that 13-3 lead after 3, and they just Dolphins scored 10 points. So it's just another reminder of just how impotent the post Super Bowl era Ditka era Bears teams were, especially late in the season. They just could not fucking close the deal. And the Dolphins are not even that good. The Bears were 9-2 coming in, like you said. They gave they gave the Dolphins a lifeline. They did that so often.
Oh boy, here it is. The Miami Dolphins got a break in the fourth quarter, but they didn't need any help in overtime. Pete Stoyanovich kicked a 27-yard field goal on the first possession of overtime Sunday. The Dolphins beat the Bears 16-13. Miami, 6-6, kept its playoff hopes alive on Dan Marino's 2-yard touchdown pass to Farrell Edmonds in the final minutes of regulation after Jerry Fontenot's snap went over the head of Chicago punter Maury Buford. Buford tried to punt the ball anyway, but it was blocked by Mark Logan, and the Dolphins took over on the Chicago 4-yard line.
The Bears could have been 10-2 after that game. Again, Bears are probably a paper tiger, and there's a reason they blew that game to begin with. But I just remember the anguish of watching that old fuck Don Shula on the Bears sideline, right? Because they beat him in '88. He's got his puffy jacket, and they had them dead to rights, and they let him off the mat.
The Bears had a 50-yard field goal attempt at the end of regulation, but Kevin Butler's kick fell short.
Yeah, sorry, butthead. So they would have faced each other again in '94, a year of the Bears. Wani took the Bears to the playoffs. I can't even remember the Bears playing the Dolphins in '94. Unless that was pre-expansion, the Dolphins might have been shitty and had a 5th place schedule.
No, well, yeah, the year before maybe.
And out of '93.
The Bears were 5-4. The Dolphins were 7-2.
What year?
'94.
Oh, they did play in '94.
And the Bears rolled into town, and they took a 14-6 lead in the fourth quarter on a Lewis Tillman 1-yard run. Oh, let me tell you about Keith Jackson. Caught an 11-yard touchdown pass from Dan Marino with 9:14 left.
Is he a former Packer or future Packer by then?
I think he started with the Dolphins, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And then with 59 seconds to go, Kevin Butler made a 40-yard field goal. The Bears beat the Dolphins.
I don't remember that Bears-Dolphins. I know they played the AFC East that year. I know that they played them in '97 because that was when the Dave Wadstad Bears snapped their 0-7 start to the season on Monday Night Football. Was it right? Didn't the Bears win their first game in '97 against the Dolphins?
I don't know.
I got to pull it up here. Sorry. I'm lagging a little bit here. Long day.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The '94 game, Steve Walsh outdueled Dan Marino in that one.
Steve Walsh took us to the playoffs.
Oof.
So Marino again. The Marino was there as late as '94, huh?
He was there in '97. Bears and Dolphins in October. The Bears were 0-7. The Dolphins were 5-2. And the Bears was a wild one. Raymond Harris scored early. Jeff Jager was kicking for the Bears. Jarris McPhail, whoever that is, Andy McPhail's illegitimate son, had a 71-yard touchdown run.
Right, and he's still rubbing his wounds from the Bears' 0-14 start from that season.
Jager made another field goal. Dan Marino fumbled out of the end zone for a safety.
God, Marino.
Jarris McPhail caught a touchdown pass. Whew, he's the best.
I cannot even remember Marino still quarterbacking as late as 1997. God bless him.
Terrell Buckley had a 22-yard fumble return. They went for 2. Oh, I guess try to make it 20-18. Why would you try to go for 2? Why do you want to be up by 2 instead of 1?
Is Don Shula still the coach, by the way, on the other side?
Let's see, 97?
I think he is. Because Jimmy Johnson was
Jimmy. Jimmy took over in 96.
So Wani's coaching against his old.
Oh yeah. Oh, this was a maybe.
So
maybe Jimmy let him win. Actually, I know that never would have happened.
Exactly. No.
Let's see.
Wow.
Yeah, the Buckley 22-yard fumble return for a touchdown. Then Troy Drayton caught a 22-yard pass to Marino, and now the Dolphins are up 26-18. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Remember him?
I follow him on Twitter, right? The old Lou Alcindor.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what?
He had a 2-yard touchdown run, and that was going to ice it. That put the Dolphins up 33-18. Nothing to worry about. But then, in the final 4 minutes of the game, first an Eric Kramer 8-yard pass to Bobby Ingram for a touchdown, and then with a minute 25 to go, Chris Penn caught a 25.
Sean Penn's brother.
Yep, he's dead now. Caught a 25-yard pass from Kramer. Bears had to go for 2 to tie it. And Bobby Ingram caught a pass from Eric Kramer, sent it to overtime, and in overtime, Jeff Jager made a 35-yard field goal. How many field goals did Jager kick? 5?
The
4.
Bears, in the same year in which the Cubs started the season 0-14, the Bears snapped their 0-7 start.
97. At least the Bulls were.
Like I said, if it wasn't for the Bulls, it would easily be the worst year in Chicago sports, 1997. The Bulls winning it all for their 5th out of 6 championships kind of nullifies it. But
so that was the Bears' first ever win streak. In fact, that gave them 3 wins in their last 4 games against the Dolphins.
Probably what saved Wannstedt's job, because as you've established, by no metric should he have ever been retained after the season, and yet they ran him back out the next year.
Yeah.
So
2002.
No, 2000. They did not face. So maybe then
they did not play in 2000.
They should have faced each other in 2000, unless the Dolphins were on a 5th place schedule. It was pre-expansion. So 2002.
Another really good Bears team.
In Champaign, I'm guessing.
Bears were 3-9. They went down to Pro Player Stadium. It wasn't even Joe Robbie already. It was already renamed. It was Pro Player Stadium.
No recollection.
To play the 7-5 Dolphins. Oh, a matchup. Oh, this was a keeper. We got to find the video of this. The quarterbacks. 4 quarterbacks played in this game. The 3 who
already laughing.
3 who played for the Bears: Chris Chandler, Jim Miller, and Henry Burris. And the Dolphins quarterback, Jay Fiedler.
Oh, my God.
They were no match for Jay Fiedler. The Dolphins cruised to an easy 27-9 win. Ricky Williams.
Were the Dolphins even any good that year?
That win made them 8-5. Is this Wani? Who's their coach?
The Bears.
Yeah, this is Wani. Wani getting his revenge against the Bears.
That game was on Monday Night Football. I remember it now. In fact, there's a whole 2-hour video of this game.
Oh yeah, I'm never gonna watch that.
Yeah, I just pasted it for you.
Oh good. No, don't. I'm gonna burn my laptop.
So that's right. That was Wani's revenge in 2002 in Miami, and it didn't matter because the Bears. So the Bears had come off that unlikely division-winning season the year before, and then Jim Miller couldn't stay healthy.
Dick Duran, he's an optimist. Marty Booker caught a 6-yard pass from Burris with 44 seconds left in the game to make it 27-9. So Dick, doing the math, is like, oh, if we go for 2, we'll only be down by 16. Yeah. We're just 2 more touchdowns and 2 more 2-point conversions in the last 44 seconds. So they went for 2, but they didn't make it.
Oh shoot! Now we're down 3 scores.
Yeah, now it's over. Shit, we were so close.
Luckily for Duran, by virtue of the fact that he won that unlikely division the year before, he would be guaranteed another season beyond the 2002 season. But we don't really say too much bad about Dick Duran. He was probably the finest human being who's been a Bears coach, and not a bad coach, but just a weird period.
He got the job under weird circumstances. And
he did. He
kept it under weird circumstances.
He did.
Then he had to coach the Lions. The poor guy.
Right. It's like, his whole life is like working for the Addams family,
pushing the rock up the hill there, Sisyphus.
Exactly. So now I can just tell you, because now we're in the post-expansion, so now you play the AFC every 4 years. So my math tells me that after 2002, the next time the Bears play the Dolphins is the year in which we went to the Super Bowl. And I'm going to say that the Dolphins ruined their undefeated season, and their head coach was Nick Saban in 2006.
The 7-0 Bears took on the 2-5 Dolphins at Soldiers Field. The Dolphins were ill prepared for the buzzsaw they were about to run into. Oh no, they didn't.
Nope. And so this was like a few weeks after.
This was the Marty Booker revenge game.
there's that, but also it was like a few weeks after the October 16th Monday night game against the Cardinals. And I only know that it's October 16th because that's my wife's birthday. And we were seeing Paul Simon at the Rosemont Theater when the Bears were making Dennis Green realize that they were who they thought they were. But that was a horrible Rex Grossman game. And there was another horrible Rex Grossman game on the road in Minnesota that the Bears won. But this was the first horrible Rex Grossman game in which the Bears could not recover.
Wait,
and it was at home.
This is not a horrible Rex Grossman game. He was fine. He was 18 of 42 for 210 yards and 3 interceptions. And I'm sure he fumbled 8 times because of his tiny little doll hands.
Tiny hands, right. And he blamed his receivers.
And he went up against one of the great quarterbacks in Dolphins history. Joey Harrington.
Oh my God! At this point,
Joey had a great game. Joey was 16 to 32 for 137 yards and 2 interceptions, but he also threw 3 touchdown passes. He threw touchdown passes to Marty Booker, to Wes Welker.
Oh, Marty Booker was with the Dolphins?
Yeah, that was the Marty Booker revenge game.
I forgot all about that.
He started the scoring for the Dolphins. The Bears were up 3-0. Marty caught a 5-yard touchdown pass. Yep. Then Jason Taylor returned a Rex interception, 20 yards for a touchdown. That's always good to throw into the defensive end.
Right.
Moose got the Bears back within 14-10 at halftime. Then Welker caught a touchdown pass. Robbie kicked a field goal. Chris Chambers caught a touchdown pass. And Alindo Mare made a field goal to end it.
Wow.
The Bears were beaten soundly, 31-13 by a terrible Dolphins team.
And they were terrible. So, but the fact remains that the only 2 seasons in which the Bears went to the Super Bowl, their destiny for an undefeated season was spoiled by the Miami Dolphins. Apparently.
Right. Well, so are you saying that if they lose on Sunday to the Dolphins, it means they're going to the Super Bowl?
They're going to turn it around. It's going to happen.
Oh, it's great.
Yep.
Let's see. Next time they played 2010.
Another playoff year. That's the Thursday night game.
The 6-3 Bears.
When Brandon Marshall was on the Dolphins.
And the 5-4 Dolphins.
Yep. That's the Thursday night game.
This must have been fun watching. Bears win 16-0. 6-0 at halftime. 9-0 at one point. 3 Robbie Gould field goals. And then Matt Forte scored with a couple minutes left in the third. Nobody scored in the fourth.
Makes me nostalgic
it
for
was Jay Cutler against Tyler Thigpen.
That's right. Oh my God.
Jay 16-25, 156 yards, no touchdowns, interception. Tyler 17-29, 187 and 1 interception. Matt Forte ran for 97 yards. Johnny Knox hadn't broken his back yet. He caught 5 for 55. Devin caught 4 passes for 41 yards. And
yeah,
Greg Olsen. 4 for 4.
Greg Olsen, yeah, in his final season. Wait. Well, that was the year the Bears won the playoffs. Olsen caught a touchdown. He was there a little bit longer, but.
Yeah, it's 2010. This is NFC Championship game.
Right.
Season.
That's right. So, did they play in 2014 then? Grossman's second season when a lot of us checked out? I can't recall it offhand.
This
I
is
remember
the
Bills.
John Fox special, I guess.
No.
2014. Oh, this is Trustman. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
I just can't place
the game. This is early in the year. That they hadn't completely gone to shit yet.
Was it a high-scoring offense output again in this game?
For the Dolphins, they scored 27 points.
That's it. See, I have no recollection of this game. Yeah.
Let's see. Who's coaching the Dolphins? Adam Gase.
Was it? No,
not Adam Gase. Joe Phillips.
Please tell me.
Joe Phillips.
So I was really hoping it'd be the guy that liked to bury footballs in the ground.
Who's that? Dan Campbell? Is he burying footballs?
Scavino or
Tony Sparano.
Greg Schiano? No, Sparano. Greg Schiano.
I don't think he ever did. The 2010 game, he was the coach.
That's it. Okay, thank you. You're right.
Yeah, this one was 14-0 at the half. Charles Clay and Mike Wallace had both caught touchdown passes from the tremendous Ryan Tannehill, still playing in the NFL. The Bears cut it to 14-7 on a Matt Forte pass from Jay. Then Lamar Miller had a touchdown run. Caleb Sturgis kicked a field goal. Made it 24-7. Forte made it 24-14 with a 1-yard run, and Sturgis made another field goal. It was 27-14.
By the way, I happened to notice that the
Tannehill had a big game.
Did he?
25 of 32, 277, and 2 touchdowns.
You know,
and he ran for 48 yards.
Any guesses who his offensive coordinator was that season? Bill Lazor.
Oh, well, there you go. So the greatest Bears offensive coordinator of all time.
Right.
Bill Lazor.
Right. That was 8 years ago.
And then the last time they played.
You know, the first thing I think of the last time they played is Kevin White. I don't know why. I just think Kevin White. Didn't Kevin White make his longest NFL? Wait, Kevin White's still in the league, right?
He's back. He's back. He's playing for the Saints.
And somebody said he made a reception that was the longest reception of his career.
Yes.
Or either that, or it was like more than he'd ever caught collectively with the Bears.
No, I think it was the longest. He caught his highlight as a Bear
is at the end of this game.
No, that was the end of that was the Patriots, where he caught the Hail Mary at the 1-yard line.
I got all geeked up for no reason.
Kevin White, and I don't know that he did not. If he played, he did not catch a pass in this game.
I don't remember the Bears Dolphins game now in 2018. I got confused. I got confused with the Patriots. What happened? So overtime.
This is a wild one.
I remember it now.
It was hot.
I remember. I'm triggered.
It was October. It was hot and sunny in South Florida. Nick O'Leary caught a 5-yard pass from Brock Osweiler. Didn't Brock Osweiler never lose to the Bears?
He beat the Bears in 3 different uniforms, I think. The Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, and the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's something.
But then the Bears, Mitch, started lighting up. Oh, it was 7-0 at halftime. And then the Bears, an offensive explosion in the third quarter. Mitch threw a touchdown pass to Trey Burton, 9 yards. 12-yard touchdown pass to Allen Robinson. Jason Sanders kicked a 50-yard field goal for the Dolphins. That put him up 14-10. Tariq Cohen had a 21-yard run, put the Bears up 21-10. Then Sanders kicked a field goal, 21-13.
Okay.
Albert Wilson caught a 43-yard pass from Osweiler, and they went for 2 to tie it, and they got it. Kenny Stills caught a pass from Osweiler. But then you can't keep Mitch down. He threw a 29-yard touchdown pass to Anthony Miller with 4 minutes to go. Bears are up 28-21. All you got to do, turn it over to Vic Fangio's unstoppable defense.
Right.
And then 16 seconds later, Albert Wilson caught a 75-yard touchdown pass from Brock Osweiler to tie the game. I can't remember if it was in overtime or the end of regulation. Cody Parkey lined up. I think it was the end of regulation. Tony lined up for Cody.
Let's just call him Corky.
Cody.
I'm going to call him Corky.
The most courageous player in NFL history, thanks to Savannah Guthrie and the Today Show.
Yeah.
Cody lined up to win it from 50 yards, kicked the ball about 30 yards. Went to overtime. Jason Sanders made a field goal. The Bears lose 31-28.
Good times.
Mitch, 22 of 31, 316 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
How about this? Brock Osweiler, 28 of 44 for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, this is the thing about the Fangio defense, and it was obviously legitimately a very good defense. But it happened more than just a handful of times where the offense would score late in the game, and all Vic's boys had to do was get one stop, and they didn't.
Yep.
Most famously, the reason Cody had to kick the double doink was
the playoff game. Yeah.
Because the Bears defense let Nick Foles just cruise right on down the field and throw a touchdown pass to Golden Tate.
The ultimate bend but don't break, and I feel like that Dolphins game was kind of like that. I can't recall it. Sometimes
this one they didn't even bend. 75 yards to Albert Wilson.
But it was hot out too. I just remember thinking, or maybe sometimes I get confused with other games, but I'm trying to get a feel on that game. It was just, the frustration of, were the Dolphins even good that year? Well, they were 4-2 after that game, but I just, God,
I don't think they were good.
It didn't really matter in the context of that season because the Bears won the division. Blah blah blah.
They were 7-9.
But you're right. It was actually a very, very much of a foretelling that Cody Parkey could not nail that game down, right, and save some stem cells and not have them keep busting ass through overtime. And the same asshole would pull the same shit in the playoffs. By the way, Jordan Howard, 14 carries, 69 yards.
Oh, it was a 53-yarder he tried. He could have kicked it twice.
Whatever.
He could have kicked it and then kicked it again from where it landed, and he still wouldn't have made it.
Was that his only miss?
The only field goal he tried.
Are you sure?
I'm looking at it. 0 for 1.
All right,
for 53.
I believe you. I really wanted to believe
he made all 4 of his extra points.
2 or 3 during the game.
He also had 6 touchbacks as kicking off.
All right, so an otherwise decent day at the office. So that is the last time.
Well, he had been the Dolphins kicker, and the Dolphins got rid of him because he had a weenie leg.
Oh.
And Ryan Pace gave him a 3-year, $9 million contract because he was so accurate.
That's the thing that almost should have cost Pace's job right there, giving a kicker. Kickers, what have we learned?
Everybody, all the other teams, laughed when they...
Well, what have we learned about the last 2 kickers we've had that have been very good? I mean, we made fun of Pinero, but he was very good with the Bears. They picked him up off the scrap heap. Cairo Santos.
Yeah, but the Pinero thing, remember that was that...
The whole tryout. It was in the wake
just
of
ridiculous.
this.
Nagy made such a big fucking deal out of it. And they had they do the different things. Then they would brag about, we do this thing called Augusta Silence, where the kickers kick and nobody makes a noise.
But even Robbie Gould, right? Probably the most successful place kicker in Bears history. Do you remember Doug Bryan? That was the guy the Bears got when they in their only non-Ditka era of ascension with Lovey, 04, 05, 06. They signed Doug Bryan from the Jets, even though he had fucking shanked a kick in the playoffs for them. And Doug Bryan was doing nothing, and then he got hurt, and then they pick up Robbie Gould off the scrap heap, and then he goes for 10 years. So it's why are you spending money on Doug Bryan?
Yeah, because
Cody Parkey.
Robbie had been in training camp with the Patriots.
Right.
And the Patriots had some guy named Adam Vinatieri. So they probably weren't going to keep Robbie. So
he's Adam Vinatieri is as long as Ricky Prohl is on the other sidelines catching a game-tying touchdown in the Super Bowl, I am here to win rings.
But remember Wani couldn't get rid of Butler fast enough, and he brought in Carlos
Huerta. Yeah.
And that failed miserably.
But Butler also had some
he was old and fat.
Well, and Butler had some real
replacing Butler probably wasn't a bad idea. It was replacing him with Carlos Huerta.
Yes.
That was the bad idea.
But my point is, why are you wasting multi-year free agent deals on kickers? Why would you waste draft picks?
The year before they had Cody Parkey, one of the kickers they had that year was Cairo Santos.
Yeah. I know,
who is the greatest kicker in Bears history already.
He's pretty damn good.
He's pretty fucking good.
I just hope the next time Cairo misses one is when it doesn't matter. He's going to miss one soon.
No.
Just hope.
He doesn't ever have to miss another one.
Okay. All right.
Who says he's ever got to miss?
I don't know, man. We were kids in 1985, and Kevin Butler was 44 or 44 in extra points, and he didn't miss too many field goals either.
Remember he made a 52-yarder to beat the Packers one year? Remember that?
1986, and he hit another 52-yarder. Back when 52-yarders were rare, early in the game against the Packers later that season. But, it's funny. There's not – you're right. We just zipped through the Dolphins' history with the Bears. There's not a lot.
We've only played 13 times, and the Bears have only won 4 of them. It's not a great history. I guess that Nagy game is memorable because it was exciting.
Right.
I mean, they blew the
lead
at the
but
end.
You're right.
It was an exciting game. But the only game you really remember is the 85 one.
Right. And I guess that 88 because it was the first game in natural turf. But, they've only beaten the Dolphins.
We're not playing Remember This Grass.
Right.
Let's remember this grass.
Right. Since you and I have been able to drive.
Was it already ruined by halftime in Bears history? That's actually, I kind of miss that. The new turf seems to actually stay in the ground.
They finally stumbled across.
Although it hasn't gone through a winter yet. We'll see what happens when it gets cold.
Well, they're not even because it's real turf. It's not small case real turf.
No, it's real grass. It's Bermuda.
It still is.
Bermuda grass. Bermuda. as they like to
call it. It is pretty good, I guess, lately, but
only this year, because last year it was terrible.
Everything about
awful last year.
Is Soldier Field built on an Indian burial site? Because it's just never has
Cody
been
Parkey
right.
Cody Parkey, actually, the Bears didn't cut him. He got lost in the TV.
Right. Right. Just like just Craig T. Nelson.
You throw a tennis ball into the TV and it doesn't
Hayden Fox is coming around the corner. I just
there he. What did she say? That creepy little girl died young, right? The poltergeist.
She did, and so did her sister, who was celebrity attorney Donna McDunn's daughter, but her brother was Griffin Dunn from After Hours.
Oh yeah.
Am I making any sense?
Oh, yeah,
so the older sister,
yeah.
The older sister in Poltergeist, which, by the way, I finally introduced to my kids about a year ago, and they kind of liked it. The older sister in Poltergeist
got scene where that's with all the skeletons. That's where they find out that the house was built.
You removed the headstones, but you left the bodies. How the hell did we get that Poltergeist? Because I can do this. I can do this all day. I'm just going to say that in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, in the spring of 1984, was when we finally got cable, and that Poltergeist, which had been released in the theaters the previous season, so I might be off the air, so it might have been spring of 83, but either way, Poltergeist was playing nonstop. And of course, when you first get cable, you get HBO show, all of them. So basically, 11-year-old me and a few of my friends had every line of that movie memorized because it was constantly on. Great movie.
I remember that my grandpa got cable because he lived in the big city of 1,100 people, and
well, I thought cable came to the rural areas first because it was easier to electrify. Because cable didn't come to Chicago in the 90s. Just FYI.
Oh, well, he had it in the early 80s. I remember going to he had HBO, and remember HBO had that little magazine that they'd come out every month that showed what was going to be on when.
Their own magazine.
And every time I was at his house, I would steal it, and then I would figure out when
first
the movie I wanted to watch. Then I asked Mom if I could go to Grandpa's watch the movie. I remember seeing Rocky 3. I remember going down to watch that.
You're like, why do you want to watch Private School of Phoebe Cates?
Yeah.
Well, trust me,
it's educational program. It's called Private School. It's lectures mostly. You should let me watch it. But yeah, I would always swipe the magazine from him. He didn't care.
Right.
Yeah, he knew that if I stole it probably meant I was going to come back and hang out with him because I wanted to watch something. So.
Right.
But yeah, we got the dish in 80. My sister and I argued about what year we got it. Because I wrote in the thing about my dad, I thought we got it in 86. I think she thought it was a year later. But then we had it. We could watch everything. It was amazing. We could watch anything back then. Nothing was scrambled. If you could point the dish at it, you could watch it.
I just assumed a farm boy like you had cable ahead of everybody else because it was easier.
The farm still can't get cable.
So, but
the houses aren't close enough. Cable company won't put cable in when the houses are half a mile apart.
So, but you guys were total trendsetters in the 80s because you guys had a satellite dish too, right? So, okay.
That's what we had to do. Mom still has DirecTV because you can't get cable.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So the dulcet tones of, Skip Carey and the WTBS broadcast in the 80s.
We could watch all kinds of wild shit. Dad had a feed he could watch of the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather that didn't have it stayed on Dan during commercials, but he loved that.
Yeah.
Dan would be yelling at somebody off camera. Dan was
just waiting for him to go all Casey Kasem on somebody.
Yeah. And we got to see a Cub game. I think it was from spring training where same thing. When it went to commercial, we could still hear Harry and Steve. And basically what every commercial break was Harry pointing out broads for Arnie to point the camera at. It was great.
Right. For the hat shots.
Yep. Hey, Arnie. Third baseline. About 6 rows. And you'd see the camera move. Because we were seeing the same feed Harry was.
Right.
And Harry'd be like, no, farther over. There she is.
It was like watching Bozo's Buckets. Like, hey, whoa, hey, oh, go left, right. Oh, you're there. All right, that's it. Hone in.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I remember Dad was really disappointed when they started like blocking stuff or being aware to go to commercial.
Right. And all you regular plebes being able to watch how the sausage is made.
It was good stuff.
Well,
but yeah, there was the Spice Channel.
I remember hearing of the Spice Channel. Wait, that was like the softcore porn channel,
it wasn't
right?
Softcore. That was real. That was
like
real
Skinamax
stuff. Oh no, that was real stuff around Spice. It was basically like a health class for me.
Well, you know, right.
Oh.
There's a real ecological sort of perspective involved.
One thing I remember was it got progressively more sophisticated. We'd upgrade equipment every couple of years. When we first got the dish, it was, you know, there were several satellites, and they all had 24 channels on them. So, like, sometimes, like, maybe WGN would be on one satellite, but ESPN would be on another. So you couldn't just change the channel on the TV. Some poor schlub had to go outside, which was always me, and turn the hand crank. And Dad would stand on the porch where he could see the TV and yell at me. And he'd be like, no, the other way. Okay, a little bit more. Oh, okay, there. And then we'd like...
It's like a space age equivalent of the rabbit ears on the television.
And then we would take like a colored pencil. We started, but Dad put like a little thin line of paint. But we realized that the dish might move just a little bit on its base. So we'd take like a colored pencil and mark where the satellites were. And then you could adjust it if they started to adjust. Because if you had to change it by yourself, it was a pain in the ass. You have to run out, crank it, run back in, look, go back, do it again. It was. And then we got a receiver that had a motor. You could run a motor from inside the house, so you could turn the dish from inside the house. So you could move it, and then you could adjust it yourself. That was better.
Was it like a big giant joystick of sorts, or just like
it had a knob on it. You turn either right or left, and then the dish would slowly move.
That's a game changer, because there's nothing more frustrating than, like, especially if you're the only one home, right? Like, hey, I want to watch the West Coast version of Dynasty.
So Dad had worn a spot down in the carpet in front of the entertainment center because we didn't have the dish didn't have a remote. The TV did, but the dish didn't. So he would lay on the floor and then reach up and move the dish to change channels. He would just lay. You'd go in. It was nothing to walk in the living room. There's Dad laying on the floor watching TV,
right?
Because he didn't want to get up, sit down. He had a bad back. He wasn't going to get up and do it. So he'd lay on the floor and he wore the carpet out in that spot. And then at some point, we got, I think it was about the time I left for college, you could just punch in the satellite number on the remote, and the dish automatically moved to the satellite.
Wow. And then, space age technology there.
And then I remember I got DirecTV in 1998. And Dad would come over, and he'd be like, I don't know about this. I'm like, look, you never... The dish doesn't move. All the channels are on one thing. Just change to this. Oh, I got a lot of money sunk into this thing.
No.
It's like, it's like, yeah, but I guarantee you're paying more in programming than I am. So finally, I convinced him, and he upgraded to DirecTV. So.
Well, good work.
But Dad and I installed my DirecTV. We installed the dish ourselves.
You didn't hire those AT&T assholes that come out and...
No, we did it.
Nice.
And we initially did it. We mounted the dish on the side of my house. And then we realized there was a tree that was in the way. So then we had to take the dish down, and we ended up, we put a post in the middle of my front yard, in between the two trees. And I put the dish on the post. And it didn't look great, but it was there. I buried the cable into the house, and then we left it there. But then, slowly but surely, on my street, you started to see satellite dishes on posts in the yard. Because everybody pretty much had the tree problem that I did.
Right.
And it was almost like, well, the fucking Dolan kid It doesn't look that bad. Let's just do it. And then I put a pavers around and planted flowers around mine to dress it up. That looks so good. All right, well there you go. That was Dolphins and satellite chat and
sure.
All kinds of fun.
I think we covered it. It was a proud history for like 15 years that was totally elite. That probably doesn't seems odd to somebody that was born after 1988. And they had their colorful characters like Zonka and Marino, and it's just. But there's not much there. And there wasn't much for us to pick over, actually, for a team that, when we were kids, seemed like a giant. It's really that was all it was. It kind of went to dust because
who knows? They've got a pretty good team now.
They do.
They got Tua. The Bears got Justin Fields. Maybe the next decade will be Bears, Dolphins, multiple Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl 20 that should the Super Bowl 20 that should have been.
Right.
That's pretty much the best thing I could probably say. That's if there's any regrets about the '85 Bears, it's that we didn't get the opportunity to exact revenge on the one team that took us. That's about it.
Yeah.
And so kudos to Don Shula and all those pricks, but
Bears ended up with the trophy that year. So
fucking A. And the Dolphins have not won one. Dolphins haven't won a Super Bowl since 13 years before then. So another franchise that ranks below the Bears in our lifetime.
Yeah, and have they even been in an AFC Championship game? They were in one in Buffalo, right?
So that's the thing. I actually gave this some thought. They were all right. So they lost in '85. And then Marino got back there, I know, one of the 4 times in which the Bills went with Jim Kelly. Marino had a golden opportunity at home in the 92 season. And you would have thought that the Bills would have been like, fuck it, we're tired of going to this. We just got embarrassed 2 years. Well, we got heartbreakingly lost to the Giants, but then we got embarrassed for the Cowboys. We don't want to go back. And that was Marino's best chance, 92. They were at home, and somehow they lost. But I don't think they really went to that many others because remember, like after the Bears won, it was like Broncos, Browns, 3 out of 4 years. And the one year in which it was not the Broncos and Browns in the 80s, it was the Bengals, and I don't think it was the Bengals.
They haven't advanced past the divisional round of the playoffs since 1992.
Damn. That's got to be some Lions territory, frankly.
So I don't even know. They lost the wild card game in 16. They lost it in 8. That's it.
I feel
2 playoff appearances since 2001.
It's got to be weird for
they
like
lost
a
the
kid.
Wild card game.
Wow.
They lost a that doesn't not doing the thing I want it to do. I always want to see all their games here. Oh, that's 2008.
It almost must seem weird to listen to guys like us give them any kind of reverence, considering how long they've been.
They won their last playoff game 22 years ago. A wild card game against the Colts. Their coach was Wani.
Wow! Now that's the way to finish. I think we found a way.
Wani beat Peyton Manning in the playoffs.
Wow! Make it stop.
Jay Fiedler outdueled Peyton Manning.
I would not have guessed that Wani won a playoff game with the Dolphins. Wani was won a playoff game. Was it on the road, by the way, like it was at the Bears? Was it in the Hoosier Dome?
No, it was in Miami. Then they went. Then they went on the road to Oakland, and they got beat 27-0 by the Raiders.
And that's the year that Oakland went to the Super Bowl. So, wow.
And since then they have lost. So they have a 1-game losing streak there.
But they haven't been in that many.
So 2, 3. Well, they only lost 4 playoff games in a row, but they've been in 2 playoff games the last 20 years.
Wow. All right, so yet another. I just don't understand how we can keep coming across franchises that are just more sad sack than the Bears. But hey, here we are. That's incredible. It's incredible that Dave Wannstedt has their last playoff victory. I'm going to savor that over the course of the next few days.
They could bring him back.
Bring him back, kids.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike.
All righty. Thanks, Eddie.
Many of us have herpes.
I just want this to be over.